Hi, I'm Glenn Hughes.
And I'm Ed Muzio.
For 3 decades, I've been working inside a publicly traded company.
And for over a decade, I've been an entrepreneur supporting companies like Glenn's from the outside.
In this series, we look at the problems and challenges of the modern workplace
And provide our ideas and advice.
From the inside
and out. I wish I could get more development. People say this to me, Glenn, after class, or sometimes they didn't get to go to a class that I was giving. I need more development and I'm not getting it. How do I get it? What's your answer when an employee says that to you?
I have an exercise I give to people when they look at me and go, you don't understand, my manager's not developing me or my company's not investing in me. Given the reality of our current world, I look at people, you can do this at home, I have them get out a piece of paper and a pen, and I say, in the last 90 days, write down every new task you've worked on, every new customer you've engaged with, every new process you've had to handle or understand, every new person you've had to build a relationship with. Write those down. And when they're done, I say, that was your development. The reality of the current world is that our competitors are challenging us, our customers are challenging us, the world around us is challenging us. You're developing, whether you know it or not. It's time to get your hand around that sort of accidental development and realize that's happening because as a context of the company you work for. Now, the other question is, am I being intentionally developed towards an end?
Well, before you go there, that's a good point, because one of the things that I work on is these sort of experiential simulation learnings, which are mostly live sessions. But what we're really after is the model of learning by doing that happens exactly in what you're describing, which is I have an immediate need to know how to do something I don't know how to do, so I go figure it out and then I do it. That's the experiential learning cycle in its most simple form. So some of your best development is coming from there. Now, is it intentional development or not? One way that I ask that question is, if you do your exercise, now take a look at that, and is all that learning collecting into some useful thing, or are you distracted in 20 different directions and you've learned a bunch of stuff you'll never use again? That starts to paint a picture of, is it intentional or is it accidental?
Well, exactly. I always give the example of, I could send you to Korea on a work assignment tomorrow. You would land there and you would fuddle your way through Korea, you'd make a bunch of mistakes, you'd eat a bunch of food, you'd work with a customer you'd never met before and a bunch of other people doing something you'd never done before, and you'd come back having learned a lot. So there's 2 questions there. The first question is, are you taking the appropriate amount of time to reflect on that learning? What did I learn? How did I learn it? How would I use it again? I think that's the step that's missing most of the time that we provide in workshops, and we say, what happened, right? How would you use it? Most people come back and just jump back into the daily grind, don't even realize they've learned something, and certainly have no plans to use it again.
Well, you know, and in that regard, the model that we use, and that varies a little from this, but the model is for the total experience % time, 1/3 to the structured experience, 1/3 to the debrief, and 1/3 to the application. So if you spend an hour practicing something, then you should spend an hour debriefing how it went, and then another hour practicing whatever you learned from that cycle. It doesn't quite work for a 1-year assignment, but certainly 5 minutes is not enough for a 1-year assignment.
No, and what you talk about is our workshops, and we swear this is true, are intelligently designed.
That's right.
Right? Your trip to Korea wasn't.
Structured experience. That's
unless it is, right? So now contrast you being sent to Korea to Ed 2.0, who's a little more on the ball. And Ed says, hey, I know I'm going to be going to Korea. I'm going to turn this into a learning experience. I'm going to get some books and read about it. I'm going to get some Rosetta Stone courseware and learn the fundamentals of the language. I'm going to go eat at a couple of local restaurants. I'm going to talk with some Korean friends. Hey, I might even log on and make a friend over there or book a tour. And you go over and it turns into an intentional learning experience that you're planning to utilize as part of your ongoing development.
You know, there was an experience I had a number of years ago now, and I won't be specific about the organization. It wasn't the big one that employed me. It was a different organization. But I had a chance to listen to the leader of the organization talk. It was a special thing he did every so often, an hour in the morning with some people that were there, and I got to hear it. And I left thinking he didn't tell me anything I didn't know. In fact, he kind of obscured some things. When I get invited next time, I'm not going. But instead, when I got invited next time, I thought, you know, what he did do is he delivered very smoothly some answers to some very difficult questions. I'm going to go back and just watch for that. And I learned everything I know now about how to deliver answers to difficult questions. I learned from that guy in that hour.
Yeah.
He had a model where he'd set up the context. He'd sort of step through it, he'd walk you through the options, he'd tell you what happened, and even if he didn't give you an answer that was at all satisfying, he did it in a way that made you realize he had thought about it, it made you feel valued, it was smooth, it didn't cause a fight. I mean, it was just great, and that was because I went in with what you're talking about. I went with a clear, structured idea of what I was after in the situation.
So let me be clear. I'm not letting managers off the hook for development. I'm not letting organizations off the hook for development. They own it. A manager's responsible for making sure that his or her talent needs are fulfilled in the future.
Well, let's take that a step further.
Yeah, and if you're not developing your people, you won't be ready for that future when it gets here.
Right, right. And actually, what I would say is, so let's talk to the manager for a minute. The manager says, I'd love to develop my employees. I have no budget for classes. Now, I sell classes, so I hate to hear that. But doesn't mean you can't say to the employee who's heading to Korea, let's sit down for half an hour and write some objectives for the trip from a learning perspective. That's free, right? So I think that the message to the manager is find the structured experiences or create structure in the existing experiences. There's no reason that can't be the same message to the employee. Back to your original exercise, for your next 90 days, what experiences are you planning and what are you going to do? Now, we can also have the conversation about how you talk your manager into classes, but whether or not you can do that, what are you going to learn from what's coming up, I think is the right question.
So now that you agreed that the manager has some responsibility, I'll go to the opposite tact again. And I will say that I worked for a company for 30 years that I love, and my manager for many of those years was my best friend, and I didn't trust either of them with my development plan. It's mine. And I don't think about development once a year. I think about development almost daily. What am I learning? What am I trying? Where am I experimenting? Where am I stretching? One of the ways I think about it is, what am I going to post on my LinkedIn profile in 3 months? And then I do the activity and I post the thing. So it gives me a target to aim for, but I own that. Nobody else owns that. And putting the onus on the organization is a recipe for getting something you don't want.
Well, all the organization can do is basically say, here's where we think we need you, and we're going to structure you that way. But you have a voice in the system too, which is here's where I want to go. Ideally, you can find some overlap between where they want you to go and where you want to go. But only you can set your own course. And you may be different than most in the frequency with which you do it. But at least once a year, once every 6 months, where am I heading and what would help me get there? And is this the track I want to be on? I think the answers are sometimes difficult to those questions, but I think unfortunately people then don't ask the questions. That's a mistake. Even if you think you're on the wrong heading, and for 3 years, every 6 months you say, I'm on the wrong heading, how am I going to get off it? That still has value at the end of the third year when you finally move off it. Whereas if you never ask the question, you never answer it.
So, how are you going to develop over the next 90 days to put something new on your LinkedIn profile?
And what's the heading you're going to follow after that?